This is the Quiet Archive. This record is filed under the Quiet Facility, Intake Interview Room. The following document is procedural. It contains no escalation. It is presented in full. You may listen, or you may drift. The archive will continue either way. That flows gently, no activation spikes, no theatrical tone. Quiet Facility Intake Interview Room. The room is prepared prior to occupancy. Lighting is set to a consistent mid-level brightness to prevent visual strain while avoiding any sense of spotlighting or theatrical emphasis. 2 chairs are positioned at equal distance from the central table. The table surface is cleared of unnecessary materials, leaving only a standard intake form, a capped pen, a glass of water placed slightly to the right of center, and a secondary blank sheet for incidental notation. The clock is visible but unobtrusive. It is mounted high enough to prevent fixation, yet accessible to either party should temporal clarification become necessary during the course of the session. Ventilation remains constant. Airflow is calibrated to prevent perceptible drafts while maintaining environmental neutrality across the duration of the interview. Ambient sound levels are controlled. External noise is minimized through sealed door alignment and insulated wall panels to ensure acoustic consistency. A recording device is present. It is disclosed verbally at the beginning of the interview and confirmed in writing to ensure procedural transparency. The device remains stationary. It is placed equidistant from both chairs to prevent directional imbalance. No decorative elements are introduced. Walls remain a uniform matte tone to minimize associative interpretation or emotional inference. The door remains closed during intake. However, it is never locked, and this detail is clarified within the first 30 seconds of engagement. The interviewer enters first. They confirm documentation accuracy, verify file identifiers, and ensure that all prior intake materials correspond to the scheduled subject. File labeling is checked twice. Redundant verification reduces administrative drift. The subject is invited to enter. Entry is neither rushed nor delayed, and pacing is allowed to remain consistent with the standard walking cadence. Seating is offered without directive pressure. The subject may choose either chair, though symmetry ensures that no hierarchical implication is conveyed through spatial design. Names are exchanged. Pronunciation is confirmed to avoid repetition later in the interview. The intake form is referenced but not immediately engaged. Instead, the interviewer begins with a neutral orientation statement outlining duration, structure, and the purpose of the session. Duration is defined clearly. The standard window is 45 minutes, though this may be shortened or extended within reasonable bounds if both parties consent. Structure is sequential. The interview will proceed through identification verification, environmental adjustment confirmation, narrative intake, procedural clarification, and session summary. The subject is informed of pauses. Either party may request one without justification, and no explanation is required. Water is acknowledged. The subject may drink at any time without interruption to the recording. Initial silence is permitted. It is common for individuals to orient themselves spatially before engaging verbally, and this adjustment period is neither interpreted nor annotated as reluctance. Identification is confirmed. The subject states their full name, date of birth, and current address, each repeated once by the interviewer for accuracy. Documentation is cross-referenced. If discrepancies appear, they are corrected immediately rather than deferred. No's interpretation occurs at this stage. The purpose remains verification, not analysis. The interviewer maintains a consistent tone. Volume remains slightly below conversational average to encourage reciprocal modulation. Questions begin with open format. The subject is invited to describe, in their own words, the reason for attending the quiet facility. Interruptions are avoided. Clarification is requested only when statements become procedurally ambiguous. The interviewer takes notes sparingly. Excessive writing can create perceptual imbalance, so documentation occurs in brief intervals, followed by attentive stillness. The subject's pacing is mirrored subtly. If speech is slow, responses remain slow. If speech accelerates, tempo remains steady rather than reactive. Emotional descriptors are not supplied by the interviewer. Instead, the subject's own terminology is used when reference becomes necessary. Silence may reoccur. In such instances, the interviewer waits 5 to 7 seconds before asking whether elaboration is available. Body language remains neutral. Hands rest on the table, palms downward or lightly folded, avoiding gestures that imply approval or disapproval. Eye contact is moderated. The interviewer looks toward the subject while speaking, but allows periodic visual breaks to prevent intensity. The intake form is introduced gradually. Each section is explained before completion rather than presented as a single administrative block. Section 1 addresses environmental comfort. The subject confirms temperature adequacy, seating comfort, lighting tolerance, and any auditory sensitivities. Adjustments are permitted. Minor modifications are made immediately to prevent distraction during later narrative phases. Section 2 addresses current circumstances. This includes housing stability, employment status, educational engagement, and any recent changes in daily routine. Responses are recorded factually. No speculative notes are entered into the file. Section 3 addresses perceived objective. The subject is asked what outcome they expect from contact with the facility. Expectations are not corrected. They are simply documented for alignment review at session close. The interviewer maintains steady breathing. Audible breath patterns can influence conversational rhythm. Questions proceed in measured order. Past experiences are referenced only after present context is sufficiently defined. Chronology is clarified gently. The subject may approximate dates if exact recall is unavailable. Memory gaps are not pressured. Acknowledgement of uncertainty is treated as valid data. The recording device remains visible. Transparency reduces later procedural disputes. The interviewer refrains from evaluative language. Terms such as good, bad, appropriate, nor concerning are omitted unless directly quoted. If distress appears, pace is adjusted. However, tone remains stable to prevent amplification. Water breaks are offered at midpoint. The offer is optional and non-directive. The subject is asked whether prior interviews have occurred. If so, reference numbers are requested for file consolidation. Confidentiality parameters are restated. Information remains contained within institutional guidelines unless legal thresholds require otherwise. Thresholds are defined abstractly. Specific scenarios are not dramatized. The intake continues. Focus returns to the subject's current functional capacity. Sleep patterns are discussed briefly. Duration and perceived restfulness are noted without interpretation. Nutrition is addressed neutrally. No recommendations are issued during intake. Physical health is acknowledged. Recent medical consultations or ongoing conditions are recorded if volunteered. Daily structure is mapped. The interviewer asks for a typical day description from waking to rest. Temporal anchors are useful. They allow later cross-reference without reliance on emotional recall. The subject may express uncertainty. In such cases, approximation is accepted. Physical environment is described. Lighting, noise levels, privacy, and shared occupancy at the subject's residence are noted if relevant. Transportation access is clarified. This determines feasibility for follow-up appointments. The interviewer maintains posture. Subtle shifts are minimized to prevent distraction. If external factors are mentioned, they are recorded. However, responsibility attribution is not analyzed during intake. The session moves toward clarification. The interviewer summarizes key factual points to confirm accuracy. Corrections are invited. The subject may amend phrasing or add omitted details. No urgency is introduced. Time remaining is stated calmly at the 30-minute mark. The final section addresses next steps. Options are presented as structured pathways rather than directives. Pathway 1 involves continued documentation. This would include additional sessions focused on expanding current records in measured increments. Pathway 2 involves referral. External resources may be contacted with written consent and defined scope. Pathway 3 involves closure. The subject may decide that intake alone is sufficient at this time. The interviewer explains implications. Each pathway is described in equal detail to avoid perceived preference. Consent forms are reviewed if necessary. Signatures are obtained only after verbal confirmation. The recording device is acknowledged again. The subject is reminded of their right to request transcript access. Questions are invited. Clarification is offered without expansion beyond procedural boundaries. The session approaches conclusion. The interviewer summarizes the primary data points gathered during intake in neutral phrasing. Tone remains consistent. No summary is dramatized or embellished. The subject is asked whether the summary feels accurate. Agreement or correction is documented. Remaining time is stated. Usually 5 minutes remain for final remarks. The interviewer avoids new topics. Closure focuses only on reinforcing existing material. Gratitude is expressed briefly. It is formal and non-personalized. The recording device is stopped. This is done visibly and audibly. The intake form is placed into a folder. The folder is labeled with date, session number, and intake classification code. The subject is informed of follow-up timelines. Standard review occurs within 5 working days. Departure is unhurried. The door is opened by the interviewer as a gesture of neutral courtesy. The room returns to baseline. Chairs are repositioned symmetrically, and the table is cleared of temporary materials. The glass is removed. The pen is capped and replaced in its designated drawer. Lighting remains constant. No changes made between sessions. The recording device is reset. Previous files are archived before the next appointment. The file is transported securely. It is stored in the designated archive cabinet under sequential numbering. The archive cabinet remains locked. Access is limited to authorized personnel only. Documentation is logged. Time in and time out are recorded precisely in both digital and physical registers. The session is complete. No interpretation is appended beyond factual notation. Quiet facility. Intake. Interview room remains unchanged. Its purpose is to provide structured containment without escalation, maintaining institutional neutrality across every interaction. Procedures are followed consistently. Consistency ensures that each subject receives identical structural conditions regardless of narrative complexity. Silence returns to the room. The clock continues its steady progression without commentary. Air circulates evenly. The table waits for the next form. No residue remains. Each intake concludes as it began. Procedural, measured, and contained. The archive grows incrementally. Files are organized sequentially rather than thematically to prevent narrative clustering. Patterns may emerge over time. However, pattern recognition is reserved for designated review stages, not intake. Intake remains singular. It documents without interpreting. The quiet facility does not escalate. It observes, records, and preserves. The interview room remains prepared. Chairs aligned, table centered, light steady. Another appointment will be scheduled. The structure will repeat without deviation. When it does, the opening words will remain consistent. Quiet facility. Intake. Interview room. The record concludes. The room remains unchanged. The chairs are aligned as before. The table is centered beneath the steady light. The clock continues its measured progression. Its movement does not require attention. Air circulates at a constant rate. There is no shift in temperature or tone. The recording device is no longer active. Its indicator light has returned to neutral. The intake form rests inside its folder. The folder is placed in sequence within the archive cabinet. No additional notes are appended. The document remains procedural and complete. The quiet facility does not react. It maintains structure. The interview room is prepared for repetition. Nothing in its arrangement signals urgency. Silence occupies the space evenly. It is not heavy. The table surface reflects a muted line of light. The reflection does not move. Walls remain matte and uniform. They do not suggest interpretation. The door is closed but not secured. Access remains possible. The hallway outside remains still. No footsteps are scheduled. The archive expands gradually. Growth occurs without acceleration. Files are added in sequence. They are neither prioritized nor ranked. The clock advances 1 minute, then another. There is no announcement of change. Time passes without commentary. The air system continues its calibrated cycle. It neither increases nor decreases its output. The interview room remains symmetrical. Balance is preserved. Another session will occur at some point. It will follow identical procedure. Preparation requires no visible effort. The structure is self-maintaining. The light remains constant. It does not dim or brighten. The chairs do not shift. They wait without expectation. The archive cabinet remains closed. Its contents remain organized. No file calls attention to itself. All entries exist equally. The corridor outside the room remains neutral. Sound is absorbed before it can travel. The quiet facility does not escalate. It documents and contains. The system does not hurry. It operates at its designated pace. If you are listening, the archive continues. If you are drifting, it continues as well. There is no requirement to remain present. Completion does not depend on awareness. The room persists in its arrangement. It requires no observation. The clock continues its measured rhythm. It neither accelerates nor delays. Air circulates. Light remains steady. The folder rests in sequence. The cabinet remains locked. Another record will eventually be opened. It will begin in the same manner. The words will remain procedural. The tone will remain neutral. The quiet facility remains unchanged. It maintains structural consistency. The interview room is ready. It does not anticipate. Silence returns fully. It is stable. The archive remains quiet.